Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to create diagrammatic display styles in Rhino. This is great for context diagrams or urban diagrams. It's also great for context plans and context sections. And it is very easy to do, very fast. It's only Rhino and like barely any Illustrator work. So let's just go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to type in options. So we'll type in options and we're going to edit our display style. So we're going to go down to where it says view over here. Click on it and click on display modes and then find rendered and then click copy. And then give it whatever custom name you like. You know, I called mine playful diagrams, you know, so give it a name you like. I already made settings, but do this, right? Give it a name and then just click OK. All right. And then you can just get out of there once you do it. So you're going to click OK and then you're going to get out of this. And then you're going to go here and you're going to activate that view. So you go here and find playful diagram and activate it. So we're going to go back and type options again. And then you're going to go back down to view, down the very bottom over here, and then do display modes. Okay. And then find this custom display style you created, which is playful diagram, right? And then I'm just going to go in and start telling you all the settings to do. Okay. So obviously we did the name already. And then background color, I would give it a solid color of your choosing. So you would go here and pick solid color and then pick the solid color you like. Ground plane settings. This is optional. It's okay if you have it on or off. I currently have it off because I have a physical plane drawn. If you do not want to have a physical plane drawn and want to use the default ground plane in Rhino, then have it on. And for altitude, actually, you want it at the 0 point if you want it exactly at the Z0, okay? So again, I already have a ground plane. So I don't need the ground plane from Rhino, but if you don't, then have that activated, okay? Going back down here for shading objects, shade objects, flat shading. For colors, I'm using objects color. What that means is it's using the layer color, which I want because it's very easy to change and do options for colors. So I have color material usage as objects color, okay? Backface settings, this is important. So like if you have any transparent objects, so for example, you see here this little skylight here, I actually have a layer that has a transparency to its color. If I was looking on the other side of this, if I don't have transparency on, it's gonna look solid. So I give it for the backface setting, I say use objects color as well, but then for transparency, I give it 75%. You don't have to do that, but it just makes the transparency more consistent, right? And you'll see when I do the sections. But again, you see how the skylight here is transparent. If I was looking at the opposite side, if I do not give it a transparency, it's gonna look solid. So that's what the backface setting is doing for you. Now for show surface edges and all the visibility options here, you see I don't really have anything checked. Show surface edges is the only one I really have checked for my geometry. So I don't have any tangent edges or seams or sub-Ds or meshes, anything like that. Like you see these blocks here, these are all meshes, but I actually don't want them checked because it gets very busy. It is a personal preference if you want it checked, but I personally don't like to do it. I don't like to have it checked, but I will show you the settings if you want to have it activated. So right now I only have show surface edges checked. The only other one that I would probably have checked is show tangent edges, which is good for like curved geometry, right? That's the only one I would have checked. If you have curved geometry, then have show tangent edges. But if anything is like primarily orthogonal and angled and not curved, then I would just stick to show surface edges only, you know? And then these are all optional down here if you want to, but like I really just want to emphasize the color in these types of display styles, okay? Now, this is the most important thing here, okay? Scene lighting. So for lighting method, I'm doing scene lighting, okay? I'm not doing ambient occlusion or default, I'm doing scene lighting, very important. And then the ambient color is super duper important, okay? So when you're doing your color scheme, right, you can do it as black or white, and it's going to look like, you know, like a white clay model or something like that. But if you want to give something like a specific hue, you can make the ambient color of the entire model like a blue or a magenta, right? So for example, I'm doing an actual blue, like just a legit blue color, right? But if I change it to a different color, let's say like I do gray, for example, right? So do you see how it changed the tone of everything on here? So this is more like a black and white diagram, you see? So you decide the ambient color. If you want it black and white, you know, it'll make things a little bit more monochrome, right? But I like to give these a certain hue, like blues or magentas or cyans, you know? Typically, I like to stay on the darker tones. So like blues and magentas work very, very well. Like they work very well for these types of aesthetics. So I'm going to go back and just keep it on blue. And I'm going to make a comment about the specific color. Okay, this is very important, this color that we have here. Okay, but I'm going to go through all the settings. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is we don't have to do any points or any curves. I'm not showing any curves. So everything here is just solid geometry, like solid surface geometry, either planes or like actual solids. I don't have any curves on here. If you want to show curves on here, then you have to make sure that you have show curves checked as well, okay? If you want to edit how curves are displayed. But again, I only have solid geometry on here, so I don't need to edit any of these on here except my surfaces, okay? So my surfaces, you see, I'm saying use single color for all edges for surface edge settings and naked edge settings. So what that means is if you see here, like these edges you see here, right, are going to have the color that I assign it, right? So I'm assigning all that same blue tone because I want to think it comes like monochrome blue, you see? So everything will have this blue color to it, okay? So that's what the surface edges and naked edges are, all right? So width usage, that's the actual width of the line that you like to have, right? So if you do use objects width, it's going to use the width that you assign it on your layer line type, okay? Which is default, I think like default or hairline, which is like super thin, right? Or you can give it a pixel. If you do pixels, I think you can give it like, what is it called? Like a value of 1, I think, right? So, and I wouldn't go any higher than 2, to be honest, because 2 gets really thick. So I typically stay around 1. If I did pixels, for example, I just do a value of 1. And it's going to take some time for it to come up, but that's what I typically do. So right now this is width 2, I would change it to 1 for both of these, okay? That's if you do pixels, but I like to use objects width. I think on Rhino 7, they don't have use objects width. So if you're still on Rhino 7, you have to stick to pixels. So just do 1. So that's what that is right there. Okay. And just quickly, if you have curves, you do the exact same thing. You can decide the color you want and the scale you want. But again, I do not have curves on here. I'm only displaying all surfaces on here. And then the same thing with meshes. Again, like I said earlier, I do not want to display any of the curvature of the edges on my meshes. So I'm not showing anything on here, right? If you want to, then go ahead and just make these all a value of 1 and then pick a line color that you like. And don't worry if it looks really thick. When you actually do the screen capture, or if you do the print of it, it's going to look really thin. And I'll show you at the end of this video, I'll show you how it looks with or without the curvature around the meshes. I personally prefer it not with the curvature, but some people might. So I'll show you the difference. But this is where you edit it. And I would give the mesh settings, the wireframe 1, edge 1, naked edge 1, and non-manifold 1. You know, I would give those all values of 1. And nothing higher than that. Absolutely nothing higher than that. Just quickly, the reason why I don't like to, because some meshes have like a lot of triangulation to it, and it makes the image look very busy. So that's why I like to keep it just pretty solid with color, okay? Nothing with lights. Now clipping planes. Clipping planes, I like to do the solid color and the edges the same color. Honestly, I don't even need to have a thickness to this. It can just be 1. I have it as 3, but you can honestly just have it as 1 if you wanted to. But I like to have these matching so that it feels like a true poche, a thick poche. And I'll show you how this looks like when we do like a section option. So that's just one thing to keep in mind, okay? So for shadows, I have this on high quality, both for the actual quality of the shadow size and for the skylight shadow quality. Those are on high quality. Soft edge quality, edge blur, I actually have it on the lowest just because I want this to be like hard edge shadows, okay? Self shadow and artifacts, definitely cleaner. You definitely want self shadow and artifacts to be very high quality. So you want it to be very clean. I don't want anything casted on transparent objects. So again, you see like this skylight here, this is actually a transparent object. I don't want any shadows cast on it. So I don't want any shadows on it, okay? Camera-based clipping plane, you can also have it as none. My shadow color is also matching. It's also matching the ambient color, okay, that I had originally, all right? And so shadow intensity, I brought it down to 70%, okay? So it's not, if I did it 100%, these shadows would be much darker. So I brought it down to 70%. Now, shadow ignores user-defined clipping plane. So I have this unchecked, okay? So if you have it checked, it's going to, for example, cast a shadow of an overhang, even though you're cutting with a clipping plane. You don't want that. I want the shadows to be true even when I cut with the clipping plane. Or I guess I want it to be true according to the clipping plane, not true to the original geometry. Okay. And that's all the settings that you do, right? And then you just start playing around with the colors, which I'm going to show you, all right? But before I do that, I want to show you the sun settings, okay? So for my sun settings, I go over here to the rendered option over here, right? You see this little like rendered hand option over here. I click on it. You don't have to have always on here if you don't want to. You can just right click on these tabs and add whichever ones you want. So right here, there's a couple important options that I want to show you. So I like to keep this on the viewport quality, final quality, even though we're not actually like rendering anything. I just like to do this on the safe side, but it doesn't really have any effect. But down here, background, again, our display styles are going to override this. If we go down to, I like to do transparent background just to be on the safe side, but again, it's going to override this. Ground plane on, again, display style overrides this. Your lighting. I want my sun and my skylight to be on. My skylight's not that strong. I have it at 0.5 intensity. I don't want it too strong. I don't want it like at one or thing. I want it just around 0.5, 0.25. Because if I have it more, it's going to make everything much brighter and you start to lose color. So 0.25, 0.5. Sun settings, I have my sun on manual control. And I do not go higher than 1 for intensity because, again, it'll blow things out. Okay? And then you just play around with the angles that make sense to your actual like sight orientation, right? Just make sure it's oriented correctly. All right? So, and you just see like the shadows that you like, the shadows that you're getting. Okay? And then just click OK. All right, so that's basically it for the display style settings and how to just set everything up for you to experiment with colors. So like you said, you see, like I'm not using that many different colors here. I'm using like light blues, like lavenders kind of, you know, that's the only colors I'm using, okay? And this is just a really great exercise in like testing out different colors for different representation of styles. So if you see here, right, like everything is kind of like this like bluish lavender, right? And then the only thing that's like popping is the actual design itself to have just contrast and hierarchy among the context, right? Which you want. Like even if it's like an urban context diagram, you want your design to just pop out as a diagram, right? With color and a little bit of line work, okay? So that's just one thing to keep in mind. So like everything like, you know, like road strips, which is this right here, and like sidewalk, context buildings, right? These are all like basically fall in the same color, okay? I want to show you what happens when I start to change color. So like if we do, this is like the walls layer, which is here, right? I can make everything more like monochrome, right? So if I go here and change it to like this color, maybe it'll make things all monochrome. And I think it'll do it live. So you see now this looks monochrome, right? But you see now like it kind of blends in a little bit too much with everything. So there's no hierarchy, right? Or like you can go like make it just really pop, right? Like over here, you see? And so then that looks even more diagrammatic, right? I would say whatever your ambient color is, you want to stay within like a tri-color spectrum. What that means is like we did an ambient color of like blue, right? So I don't want to go anywhere beyond this color zone right here. Once I do, it starts to look really weird in terms of just complementary colors, okay? So I would stay around this spectrum. So for example, if your ambient color instead of like blue was red, then stay like around this zone right here for the contrast of colors. Like this pops, this looks great, you know? So if you want it a little bit more subtle, you know, or a little bit more contrast or more monochrome, just play around with these colors to see what you like. Or you can do the opposite if you wanted to, right? So like you can go in and, for example, let's say you want the contrast to be very different. Like just select all of these here, right? You see, this is actually a great example of why you don't want to steer too much away from your color spectrum. Like this looks a little weird. It looks like color was masked over it. Okay. So that's why maybe, or like you go more on the red side. So this looks more monochrome again, you see? So again, you want to play around with your colors on here to see what you like the most. I like the contrast that the original one had. So I'm just going to stick to that. Now, there's a couple other tricks that I want you to know about. If you see these trees here, and by the way, I made a complete video dedicated to these like assets and trees and blocks. Like you see these people, these are actually 3D people. There's an interesting thing that happens with the display style in Rhino when you change the ambient color to a specific color, like a blue, right? If you make any geometry that color, it becomes a solid object of that color. You don't really see the shading of it anymore, right? So like you see, I mean, these are just little glitches, but like you see these people here, how they're just like, they look like solid blue, right? These are actually 3D people, and I'll show you what I mean. So like, here's people, you see? And I have it as the same color as the ambient color, right? If I make it any lighter, then you'll start to see the actual 3D effect of it. So do you see now how the people look more like 3D people versus like cut out solid color? So if you want things to have like that cut out look, then make it the exact same color as your ambient color you did in your options. Okay. So I'll give you another example. Let me go to, I'll do leaves. Yeah, I'll do leaves and trunk because I have these as two separate things, right? So if I go here and I make it just blue, you'll see what I'm talking about. So do you see how the trees now all pop? They look like these like cut out trees now. You see that? So that's something to keep in mind if you like it like that. You know, for me, it seems a little too strong. That's why I had it just like a little bit lighter than this actual blue. But if you want that like cutout look, but you don't want to go into Illustrator and like, you know, fill all these colors, then this is how I do it, right? This is the whole reason why I'm doing this. So like you avoid doing all of this like fill color and live pane and, you know, Pathfinder and stuff like that all in the show. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with doing it, but this is just like such a huge time save and the diagrams look awesome anyway. So I just want you to keep that in mind when you want to make things look like a cutout, but also understand that if you want things to have more of like a glowy or like neon look or just more of this like ambient color look, you want to be below your ambient color. If you match it, it starts to look more solid. Okay. So just keep that in mind. Okay. So far we covered everything. Next thing I want to show you is the sections. Okay. So right now I'm in parallel view and this is just like an aerial axon, right? So if I go to my properties, for example, I'm in parallel view, right? For my projection, it's just an aerial axon. I want to also make this a plan site axon as well, like a section plan axon, right? So what I'm going to do is in my clipping plane, right? I'm going to click on my clipping plane, right? And then I'm going to go to my properties on my clipping plane. And under objects clipped, I'm going to do include selected. And then I'm going to click on objects, okay? And then it's going to ask you select objects for custom clipping plane, right? So that means select the things that you want to cut by itself. So you're going to select whatever that you, so I already had this selected from before, but you're going to go ahead and you're going to just select what you want from here that you want to be cut. So like, I want my entire design to be cut. I don't want this site to be cut, right? So you'll go ahead and select that and then you'll just press enter when you're done, right? So you see how I had everything selected here because I did it from before, but that's what you're going to do, right? So I only want that selected, okay? And then you just press enter when you're done and so it'll clip it for you, okay? So now do you see how this be cut, but everything else is still not cut, right? So that's what we're working with here, right? And what I would do when you do this, I would save this view. So I would like type in named view, right? And I would give this give it a name, right? Call it whatever you like. I'm calling it S4, for example, but we're gonna like and save it because what happens is when you give it a name, if you orbit out accidentally and you type in that view, it'll go exactly back to that view you had it at, which is very helpful. So you don't have to go back and redo the clipping plane. So like you see, I have the axon view and I have the clipping plane view. That's all I have. That's all I need, right? So for example, I saved a view called AX1 and it'll take me back to the axon view. You see? And then if I do S4, which is my section view, it'll take me back to that clipping plane view. So it's really important to understand when it comes to saving views. It's very helpful, right? And so let me just re-explain some things that you saw earlier. So remember the poche, the clipping plane, I have the blue outline with the blue fill, right? See, so it looks like just this thick poche. You see? That's number one. Number two, the back face settings. Remember the back face settings talking about? You see, this is like transparent. If I didn't have back face with a transparency, this would look solid right here. And this would look solid right here, right? So that's important to understand as well, okay? So that's why I have the back face settings. But other than that, you know, that's really about it when it comes to the clipping plane and the colors and the shading and things like that, right? I would definitely have your clipping plane on a different layer. So if I go to my layers, right, when I view captured a file, right, I want to have my clipping plane on a different layer so I can just turn it off, but it'll still be active. But I just don't want to see the actual clipping planes in the view. Like that. Okay. Now, when it comes to exporting this, right, I'm going to do something called print display, just so that I want to show you what happens to Linework. So I do print display. Right now the state is off. I want to have the state on and color on display. So if I do state on, right, and I do color display, and then you can press enter. So do you see how thin the lines got now, right? So the lines are actually going to be really thin when you export it. That's how thin the lines are going to be in actuality, and even thinner. Okay, so that's why if you want to put outlines on your meshes, like I showed you earlier, you can do that. It'll be thin, but personally, I don't want that because I already have the lines here as contrast. Okay, so it's really up to you if you want that or not, you know? But once you have that, then you want to take a screenshot of this, right? So I'm going to take a screenshot of it as regular Axon view, and then I'm going to take a screenshot of this with the view capture to file with the clipping plane on here, right? So right now I'll just do view capture to file. Okay, a couple of settings here, right? If you do not have a ground plane, like see, I have a physically drawn ground plane, but if you want to use the default Rhino ground plane, right, then you can have a transparent background. But if you do that, keep in mind that the shadow color is not going to have a color. The shadow color is just going to be black or gray. Okay, so that's important to understand. If you do a transparent background and you do not have a physical ground plane drawn, you're using the Rhino ground plane. If you have a colored shadow, the shadow is going to look black and white if you have a transparent background. If not, then the shadow will have like, you know, a bluish color to it to begin with, okay? So that's important to understand. So it's up to you if you want to have transparent background or not, right? Now, the next things for resolution, I always start off with viewport, right? And then I go down to custom again, and then I lock the viewport because it'll always reset the aspect ratio. Maybe there was like a glitch or something, but I just like to do that so it resets the aspect ratio, and I make it 4000. So it's basically like a 4K rendering. It's actually 8K because then I scale it up by a factor of 2. So it becomes basically like an 8K rendering, right? And then you just click OK and save it in the folder that you like and save it as a PNG folder. Okay, so you want to save it as a PNG, not a JPEG. So save it as a PNG. So you click OK, and then you'll just save it as a PNG, right? That's it. So it calls like final one. Okay, so after it saves, I'm going to go back and just go back to my other view, which is called Axon1, AX1. You can type in your views, by the way. Okay, now I want to save the exact same thing, view capture to file. So you'll go ahead and do the exact same settings and you'll just repeat it, right, for this one. Because I'm doing this like overlay style for my rendering, I want to capture this structure on its own, right? So I can capture it like this and just overlay it, which is fine. But just to be on the safe side, I want just this structure by itself with nothing else around it, right? So if I go ahead and I select it, I have it already grouped already. So I'm going to type in isolate. This is helpful because you see there's no shadows around this, right? There's no shadows, there's nothing. So like I can use this as a nice like transparent overlay with the plan or like with a section, for example, so that there's no overlap of like shadow. So like I would put this over my diagram at like 10 or 15% transparency. You see? So that's why I want it to be like shadowless, right? So like I can take it like this and just do view capture to file, right? Or I can do it with the ground plane as well if I wanted to. So I'll just do this with the view capture to file. Yeah, I like the transparent background for this one. And then the last thing I'll do on here is I will make 2D. This is the only thing that I want to make 2D. I don't want to make 2D anything else. It's your choice if you want to, but you know, the context buildings, they're not important. And I already gave them outline edges, but this one I actually want to have more control on the line work on my actual design. So I'm going to go ahead and make 2D even with the trees. You don't have to if you don't want to, but I'm going to do it with the tree. So I'm going to select this whole thing and do make 2D. So for my make 2D settings, I don't need to get scene silhouette. It's helpful, but for this one, I don't want the scene silhouette because it gives all these extra lines that I don't want. Tangent edges is helpful again if you have curved objects, clipping plane intersections. That's only if you have the clipping plane active. That's fine. Group output, that's your choice. I typically don't have it checked and be troublesome. Viewport rectangle, very important. Okay, again, saving views is very important. As you can tell, I'm always in the actual saved view, and the viewport rectangle will keep the proportion of the viewport you're getting it from. So you see, this is a great reference. So I definitely have viewport rectangle in here. And again, always save your views and then just do okay. And okay, your Make 2D is going to show up on your top view. And I typically like to group my Make 2Ds when it happens, just so that everything's put together. You can just type in group. So here's our Make 2D, right, with everything on here, right? There's some lines I might want to clean up. Like I don't need this little weird thing going on here, right? But, you know, this is everything that I need for the Make 2D, right? And again, I would highly recommend cleaning it up on here. And like, let's say you want to get the thick outline in here, you can do like a silhouette of this if you wanted to, or you can do a curved Boolean, right? It's really your choice. But I'm not going to do like a true axonometric silhouette, right? I'm just going to do a silhouette around the major geometries, but it's going to be around everything that's even intersecting as well. Not just like a basic outline. It's going to be even like the ridge. I'll make a thick outline, but I'm not going to do like a silhouette around the leaves, right? Because that just gets really, really like it gets very busy for no reason, you know? So yeah, I would clean up any of your line work before you export it to Illustrator. But once I would just select it and just do File, Export Selected to Illustrator, right? Export Selected. And I would pick the Illustrator option, right? So it'll be Illustrator. And then just give it a name that you like. And then on here, I like to do Snapshot of Current View. I don't like to do a scale. Snapshot Current View, it's always going to land on the page like the artboard in Illustrator. If you do Preserve Model Scale, make sure it's always on the 0, point, okay? Color space, that's your choice. The important thing is order layers. I always have order layers on. I don't like to have it unchecked. I always have it checked because it keeps my layering very organized and hatchet. Everything else, viewport boundary is your choice. You don't have to do that because I already have the viewport boundary for my Make 2D. This is what I need. I don't need to have this one as well. And then just do okay. One important thing to understand about your blocks is that you want your blocks to be associated by color. So you want your display color to be associated by layer, right? And you want it to be on the correct layer so that you can adjust the colors. And so if it's not adjusting the color correctly, then you have to do like block edit. So if you type in like block edit, and again, I made a separate video about this, but you want to select the block that you want to edit, right? And then you want to go into the actual block and make sure that all of the geometry is assigned to the correct display and layer. So you would want it to have it on a layer, right? Like whatever layer you want. And then for display color, assign to layer. So you'll get this dialog here, and you want to make sure all of your components, you select all of your components. So you like click on this component and then select and whatever will be highlighted. And then you want to go to your properties and you want to change again the display color and the layers are matching. So you're going to click on your component, right? And then click on the actual component itself to see what it's selecting. Then assign it to the actual layer and the display color to match that layer. Okay. So typically when you select these, it'll only unlock that and it'll lock everything else. So you can just make like a big marquee and select whatever it is. But just make sure you have these in this type of association, okay? Where it's, again, the layer you want and the display color is by layer, not by material, okay? So that's just an FYI to make sure of if you're bringing blocks in are important. Again, I made a separate video about this, like all about blocks and assets in Rhino. Okay, great. So I'm going to go ahead now and transition over to Illustrator. Okay, so now we're going to transition over to Illustrator, but before I do that, I just want to show you how the final exports look. So you see, this is like the final export when I did screen capture the file from Rhino. So you see, it's very high quality. Like even the line work is just beautiful, right? And so I'm on a 4K 32-inch screen, so this is massive, right? And you know, at 50%, this is 120%, which will never be zoomed in this much, right? But you see how fine the lines are? See, the lines are very, very fine. So if you want to bump it up to 2 pixels, you can, but just be careful. It might get a little bit thicker. It will be twice as thick as this, right? So this is basically like a 1 pixel or like a hairline width. All right. But I mean, this is the final export and you see, it just looks fantastic. I really love it. So I'm going to drop this into Illustrator. Okay. So I have my Illustrator file open right here and I'm going to do a 24 by 36 artboard. And I just want to show you how I'm going to scale things together. Okay. So if you look here, this is the actual viewport. right? This is the actual viewport proportion. And it's the same proportion of our screen capture that we did for all of our renderings. So they're all going to line up easily, right? So if I go to my folders right here. Okay, so I'm just going to drag in the first file, right? So I'll just drag this one in here like here. There it is. It's right here. I'm in outline mode. If you do Control Y or Command Y, you can toggle between outline mode. And again, the way it looks in Illustrator, it is going to look different than the way it looks like an actual preview. So don't mind the color. You just saw what you saw earlier, right? I just showed you earlier how it looked like and it was much more sharp. So ignore the quality on Illustrator. It's not going to be that high quality. So don't worry about that. So we have this here and I'm going to move this to like a rendered layer. So I'm going to make a new layer and I'm just going to call it render. Make a new layer and I'll just call it render. And I'll pull it down. I want it to be on the very bottom, okay? So this one here, let me just do Control X to cut it, and I'll do Control F to paste in place. Okay, so this is on the render layer, so on the very bottom. Okay, and so I want to size these up. So again, this is the same proportion as everything else, right? Like the viewport that I captured it with, right? So let me just turn this off for a second. So right here, I want to give this a width of 24. Okay, and then I'm going to just turn off my trees because it just takes up so much memory. So I'm going to turn the leaves and the trunk and stuff like that. It just takes up a lot of memory. Now it's much faster. Okay, so my rendering, right, I can do the exact same thing. I can give this a width of just 24 inches. Let me zoom out. It's right there. I just want to show you how it's going to line up exactly because it has the same viewport. You see, it lines up perfectly. So that's why it's so important to save your views. Okay, so you save your views in Rhino and you do view capture to file to get all the rendered shots and then make 2D with that same view. So you have the exact same proportion of the viewport. And you always want to make 2D with the viewport. Okay, so this is so important to understand. I got to be more exact. I just placed that randomly, but it's pretty much aligned. So what I can do is if I go down to my links, right, or if I actually first, I can like duplicate this 2 more times, right? Because I have the transparent version and then the section version, right? I can go here and I can drop those in as well. Or if I go to my links panel, I can just replace the file. You can go here, you can click on relink and just open it up in your file explorer. So for example, I want the transparent one. I'll place that one in there and it'll be at the same scale. So that's in there. And then I'll update this one. I'll link this one and I'll find this one, the section one. I'll place that in there. Awesome. So now if I go to my layers, right, I have these 3 here. So like if I turn this off, that's the transparent one. And then that's the section one, you see? So they're all perfectly aligned with each other. Okay. The reason why I have the make 2D, it's actually for this one here. So I can make this all dashed, right? So that's basically the major steps here is to, you know, scale it up and then to place all your renderings and align it with your make 2D. So now we're just going to start fixing the line weights. So I'm going to turn off the rendering for now and just fix the line weights here. So I'm just going to select everything here and I'll start off by making everything light, like 0.1, right? And I'll just make everything like a black for now, even though we're doing like a blue. Okay. So everything's a 0.1. I don't know what this is, but I'll just keep it. And I know, for example, the leaves and the trunks, that's really up to me if I want to keep them there, right? Let me turn those on real fast and turn everything else off. And I can just select all of them by clicking here and here, the little circles on your layer tabs. If I hold shift, I can select everything in those layers. And I definitely want those to be also 0.1, or actually not even 0.1. I want it to be much lighter than that, like 0.08. I want it really light. Like that. It's still going to look thick on Illustrator, but trust me, once we export it as like final PNGs or JPEGs from Illustrator, it's going to look very, very thin. Okay. So those are there. And then we turn these back on. Okay. So on here, like you see all these things here, I don't really care about these little things here. I care about the major outline that I see here. That's what I really care about. So I'm just going to go ahead and just select almost everything, right, that I know is going to be thick. And I'll make it a little bit thicker, not too thick, because don't forget, we already have the outline from the rendering on here. But I just want it to pop a little bit on the main axon view, right? So I might fast forward through this, but you know, I'm going to select all of the major elements here. And I'm just going to change it as I go, just so I can keep record of what's actually being changed. I don't want to select everything on this layer because, like, for example, I'll tell you why. Like, I don't want all of these little things to be thick, these major things to be thick here, you know? So I just want the major elements, like the longer line segments. If I make these, they start to pop out and they look like little dots, actually. It doesn't look proportional. Right. That's good. I do want to get these missing corners here, you know? I should have joined this all. That's why I said once you're on Rhino, before you take it to Illustrator, like clean up your geometry in Rhino. I didn't do that, but you should. You should do that. So in reality, the true outline, it wouldn't even include this. It would just be like an outline on the outermost edge, but I actually want to get the inner edges as well, just so that I can really make the geometry pop, right? Not all of the inner edges, but these main ones here. And I'll give that a line weight of 1. You'll see what I mean once you see it with the actual line weights, why I do this. Because once you see it with the trees and everything, you're gonna realize, oh, okay, like I don't need to make these little things that thick as well. And if we look back, if we feel like we need to, we'll do that. But I just want to get, you know, this stuff here. Definitely get the skylight. And I'm pressing I for the sample tool to match the line weights. And I'll probably make it much lighter than this, but I just want to distinguish it heavily so I can tell what's thick and what's not thick. It's pretty good for now. Let's see how it looks like with the trees on there. So you see, this is what I'm talking about, right? Like you're going to have these trees here coming, like covering a lot of these things, right? I might do it here, to be honest, because those might pop a little bit more, but let me see. I don't want to do it here. I definitely don't want this. It's not that important. I just really want these outside edges here. I might do it here a little bit. Let me go over here. See, let's just test it out and see how it feels. You see, it just gets a little clumsy. Like, I don't like how it looks. Maybe if I make it a little bit thinner, maybe like 0.5. It's not bad. You know, the rendering's going to come and cover this anyway, but I don't want it to be too thick. Yeah. Let me zoom in on here. Okay, I guess I'll change these as well. So let me do Control Y for outline view. Let me hide this. And what I'll do is I'll do the lasso tool. And I'll select this. And mm-hmm, 10.75, do Control Y to get an outline view. Okay, let's see how it looks with it on there. Okay, that's helpful. All right, nice. I mean, that's really about it, to be honest, like in terms of the line work and stuff like that. That's all I really want to do for Illustrator work. And then if I turn on my rendering, so let's ignore this one for now. Let me lock these. Let's do the main one. Okay, so let me line up the renderings. Let me see the rendering. I feel like the rendering needs to be lined up a little bit more. Yeah. So let me unlock these. And let me lock all of those. And turn these all on at the same time. Like that. And let me align these to each other at first. I'm going to go to Align and go to Align to Selection. And Align Center, Center to make sure they're all aligned. And then let me move this corner to the out. There we go. Like that. So now I know it's aligned. Let me see over here. I think that may be off just a little bit, but let me see the actual rendering. Yeah, so now it's like lined up perfectly, you see? Great. So just that basic line, that basic outline, you see, that just helps so much. That little basic outline here helps a lot, you know? So, but I want to change the color of it. So let me go here and let me just turn these off and let me lock this. And so I want to change the color of this. If I do, oh, because everything locked. Let me click on this one and do select. You can do same stroke weight. And I'm going to group them together. And then there's that little 0.75 ones I want to group together as well. These little dudes right here. I'm going to do the same thing. You can also go here, just select it by stroke weight. Over here as well. Select same stroke weight. Let me group it. And group those. What's this one? That's 0.75. Let me select those, group it. There you go. I want all these thick lines together to be grouped so I can change the colors together always. So I think we use like a blue, right? So we can continue that. So you have these lines are blue here. Again, this quality isn't good on the Illustrator preview, so ignore that. So once you see the final, you'll see it's going to be a very nice preview. But let's change it to blue. I can switch to RGB real fast to hit the actual blue color if I wanted to. Just want to hit the blue, then I'll switch back to cyan. Or excuse me, CMYK. Like that, you see? That's what I like. And we can make it thicker if we want to, you know, but it's really your preference. But I just think this outline helps a lot, you know? What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select this. I'm gonna cut it and I'm gonna make a new layer up above and I'm gonna call it outline. And I'll do Control F to paste in place. Like that, all right? And then I'm actually gonna ungroup it. I'm gonna ungroup the whole thing. There you go. And then I'm gonna select this because I want to make this one even a little bit thicker. So if I do select same stroke weight, there you go. It's just going to select those. Let me do 1.25. There you go. And I want to make sure that my stroke is like rounded. So I'll show you what I mean by this. So if I select this and I go to my stroke, I want my stroke to be rounded with rounded ends and rounded corners because it makes it more playful and less serious. So this becomes more rounded, you know? And we don't have to do this color if we don't like it. You know, we can do a different color, but I like this color. I think I like the hue of this one. And so, you know, it feels like a diagram already, even though this is like majority Rhino, right? This is like 90% Rhino, to be honest. But okay, so once we do this, right? Let's say, so for the plan one, right? So let me unlock this, hide this one. That's the transparent. There you go. You see, this is the plan one, you see? So we can make a duplicate of the outline, and we can also make a duplicate of all the Make 2D and just make it a like dashed line version for this one, right? Which is very, very helpful. And we can make it like super light and thin, so it's not too thick. So for this one, what I'm going to do, I'm actually not going to put any Make 2D over this because I want it to just look like this. The only Make 2D I'm going to put over it is the overall building and maybe the transparent one. Okay, so I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. So I'm going to turn, so let me just turn this off. Remember this one? This one was just the one by itself. When we grab it by itself, I'm going to overlay this one over this guy. You see this? Let me show you that one, but I'm going to make it really, really transparent. So I'm going to select this one and just make it like maybe, I don't know, maybe like 20%. See how it feels? You see, just like very transparent. So you can like barely tell. You can do, I don't know, even 30%. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it looks like when I export it. I would go between like 10% to maybe max 25%. Okay. Also, this is a preference. You don't have to put this faded rendering over it. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. You can just have just the Make 2D. So you can have just the Make 2D over it if you wanted to. right? Just to make 2D. And I'm going to show you. So I want a thick version for the basic one, which is this guy here, right? I want for like one diagram. And then I want a dash line version for this one. So you can either have a separate file. That's one option. The other option is like duplicating all of these layers and doing it, right? Maybe what I'll do is I will just copy this file and have a separate one just for this section plan, you know? But if you want to work all in the same file, then what I would do is I would duplicate all of these layers and then make them all dashed over this. So, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a separate file just for the plan and one just for the overall site axon. Okay. Okay. So here's a separate file, right? So this is the one for the overall. We'll keep that by itself. And then this one here, we're going to do this for the plan view, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select everything and I'm just going to make it dashed line. When I say everything, I mean like all of the line work. As you can tell, the rendering layer is locked and the viewport rectangle is locked. I don't need to change those. So I'll keep the original stroke values, but I'll just change it to dashed. And I'm going to make it maybe like 4-point dash. And, you know, that's basically it. So if I zoom in on here, you see this is the dash I'm talking about, right? It's going to come over here. And honestly, that's literally it. That's all you have to do, other than like labels and layouts and InDesign. But Illustrator work, that's all you have to do for Illustrator. I can technically go in here and make this like solid, right? Like make this solid and then make this dashed if we wanted to. That is an option, right? Like we could do that, right? So like you can make all this solid, right? Over here, solid, solid, and then this from up above is dashed. So that is another option that you can do. So you can, I typically like add a plus sign right here, right? Wherever it's intersecting, like there, here, 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 right? And I can select just that piece there and change the line weight. I'll typically do like Control X and then paste it in place, right? Let me show you. I can do Control X and then do Control F, right? And instead of dashed, it's not dashed anymore. It's just solid, right? We can do that to make it just a little bit thicker around those areas. You see what I'm talking about? That this is thick, then it becomes dashed up above. So that is another option that you can do. So again, I can just press the plus sign here, right there, right? Control X, Control F. And then I can give this, don't make it dashed. Like that. This is a little hiccup right here. Let me just match properties. There we go. You know? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to export these and I'm going to show you like all the different options. And so that's the nice thing. Like, let's say you don't like this color scheme. You want to try a different color scheme. Maybe you want like monochrome or like high contrast of different color scheme, or like monochrome high contrast. Once you do that, you can just plop it in here, right? If you go to like your links I showed you, just replace the link with like a new screenshot. And that's all you have to do. You don't have to update the line types or update the line work unless like you want to change the color of the line work. But other than that, you're basically done. And then again, like I said, I'll probably take this InDesign and do layouts and labels and stuff like that. So that's what I'll probably I'll show you the final exports of that with all the different options and variations. And then I'll also show you a final export where we have this with like the outline from Rhino. And I'll show you how to update that in Rhino if you want like mesh outlines on here. Okay. So I'm going to transition over and just show you final exports. Hi everyone. So I'm going to start showing you final exports from Illustrator. And I'll go ahead and I'll do a recap of everything that I did. But this is one great example of a layout that you can play around with. Let's say you had a presentation for school, right? For studio. You can do like a nice portrait presentation if you have like a very large axonometric, exploded axonometric with a lot of plan detail, for example, right? And so if you see what I'm doing here, right? I have like dashed lines that are showing the outline of the massing. And then I obviously have the section cut of the plan. And I have labels and some context. And, you know, I have the room labels here in the bottom left corner, and I have the top right corner of the title, and maybe here you can put like a description. But these are like really great layouts that you can use for portrait presentations, for example. And I'll go back again on Rhino and show you what to do. Hi everyone. So I'm going to show you final exports. Hi everyone. So I'm going to show you final exports from Illustrator. So On Illustrator, I exported the files as PNGs or TIFFs. So decide whether you want to do PNG or TIFF. PNG is really good for transparency and contrast and digital presentations. TIFFs are really good for printing. So really decide, but I wouldn't save them as a JPEG. These files here are JPEG just to save space. But if I was going to do like final production, I would always do it as either PNG or a TIFF. Okay. Now the layout, I did the layout in InDesign. I always do my layouts in InDesign. Always, always, always. I never do my layout in any other program. So after I export it from Illustrator, I will place it in InDesign and do my layout. And I'll show you all this stuff and I'll recap. But this is like a great example of maybe like a portrait presentation for Final Studio, right? So you can have maybe description text on the top left corner, room keys in the bottom left corner, and then actually label the actual axon, do an exploded axonometric that obviously reads vertically, title of the actual design maybe. But this is a really great example of using an exploded axonometric with the layout of your presentation. And I think the contrast works really well here in this type of diagram, right? Where you have like a high contrast section, and then you have a complementary color for like the surfaces, right? So I'm doing like a cyan and yellow. I know this color is not matching the massing. I'll show you one that matches the massing, but I did like the contrast of this massing with the section cut of the massing, you know? And you notice here, like I'm always showing reference, like I'm showing an actual cut, right? Or I'm showing the actual outline of the massing here, like how I showed you in Illustrator, all right? And you know, this here tells you a lot of information all at once, right? It's giving you information about the actual plan, how the plan works with the site context, the lighting, the shading, and stuff like that, right? This is an example of just like, you know, white. And the reason why I'm showing this to you is to show you like, you know, how text plays a big role in all of this, you know? This is the cyan version, which is like matching, yeah? And then let me just go down here and let me show you. So this is the one that we worked together on the video, right? Where we had this one that's popping. Again, everything you see here is all from Rhino. The only thing that we did in Illustrator was just this outline. It looks like something that's just straight out of Illustrator, right? Even though clearly it's rendered. You know, that's why I said there's no reason to like make 2D for this stuff. There's no reason for that. And the only thing I would say is that I would maybe make this a little bit thicker, right? Make this a little bit thicker if you wanted to read. There's even no outlines for the trees, you see? So, you know, I think labels would help on this. I am going to critique my own work, but like I would maybe like label this, add labels onto the things on here, like maybe like annotations of, for example, like do labels like, you know, type of massing and like skylight and opening and entrance and things like that. I think these things kind of help make it look even more diagrammatic, you know, like maybe, you know, like entry here, or you get what I'm saying, just like random arrows and labels for things, like pointing out what things are, makes this feel more like a diagram. But I just want to show you final exports and things like that, you know, with colors and how things work from a Rhino to Illustrator workflow. So this is an example when I have it annotated. You see, I'm using the lines to be parallel with the actual massing, and even the text, I'm just shearing the text. That's all I'm doing. I sheared the text on InDesign. I sheared it the same angle as this. So this is like around like 34 degrees. So I shear it both in the horizontal and in the vertical. So for example, if I go to InDesign real fast, just to show you the text I'm talking about, you see this right here? Like if I duplicate this here, I can shear it over here, right? So it'll be like, I don't know, like 33 and 33, you see? And you get something like that. You don't have to do that. It's kind of gimmicky, but I like how it goes with the massing, to be honest. The next one is I took the actual massing and I overlaid it, right? And I made it transparent over this, right? So it's like giving you like a little bit extra layer of information. It's like giving you the massing and what's underneath the massing. This might be a little bit hard to read, but I think this is just a really great usage of like layering information, like literally layering massing and architectural information. Right? It's kind of giving you a glimpse inside. So I think these diagrams work really well when you have maybe like complex circulation, right? Or like a complex section, but you want to show the massing as well, like a context of the massing. And I want to point out something that's really important. If you see here, I do not make the dashed lines really thick because this is already busy enough. Like this outline, this like transparent outline is already busy enough. I don't want to add more information by like this, making the dashed lines even thick as well. So the dashed lines are not as thick when I'm going to do like this like translucent glassy overlay. Right? So again, I think this type of like language is really great if you're trying to show maybe like a circulation diagram with the massing in place, or you want to maybe show like a complex section with the massing in place. So I think these types of diagrams work great for showing multiple layers of information all at once without being overwhelming. Like I still understand the main gist of what's going on spatially. I may not see like every detail, but I kind of understand the main concept of what's going on spatially, which is important. And then this one here is when I don't have, right? You see, this is when I make the dash line thicker because I want context. So if I guess I'll call it the translucent one. The translucent one, you see the dash line is not as thick, but when I do it without it, I make it much thicker. You see? And then I label it, I have keys and stuff like that, right? And again, I'll go back to Illustrator just for a recap, and I'll recap on Rhino as well. This is like a more high contrast one with this being cyan instead of like being this magenta, right? I should have changed the sidewalk. And again, I would always like maybe label entry, type of massing, skylight, label the space, maybe label that. Just the annotations really help, with how things work, even if it you don't really need it, it just helps it graphically, Again, another annotation style that you see here, I think I should have made it a little bit darker, but I don't want to use the same color as this, right? I don't want to make it blue. It needs, the annotation should stand out, So I think that's nice. This is it again with the section cut, See, the cyan's a little bit heavy. I do have one which has the magenta, but I didn't like how the magenta looked with this. I think the cyan's a little bit heavy on this, I do have a magenta version of this, with like magenta and cyan, but yeah. Again, this is more so for showing like layering of information than like actually like showing detailed information on the interior. It's showing like layering of multiple important aspects of information in an architectural space. But I do really like the colors in this game. I think the contrast looks really great on this. I really like it. I like the contrast of this. On this one, I kept the poche and this the same color because I just liked how this popped. I just like how everything pops on here. I mean, let me know in the comments which color you like, but I really like this color scheme a lot, particularly with the cyan and yellow. It just works so well. But I think the magenta and blue has more of like a calmness to it. It's more calm, the magenta and blue. There's something very calming about this. So it's really your choice of what you're going for aesthetically. There's no right or wrong. Now, this one's high contrast, and I did make a video a couple weeks ago of how to do high contrast drawings like this. Okay, so there is a video about how to do some things like this. I actually want to show you why this is actually not a good example of making diagrams out of this. I think high contrast is great for like overall context massing, like what we see here. This is fine, right? If you're gonna do overall context massing and you want like this high contrast look, then I think this is absolutely fine. But I think it becomes a problem when you start to show a lot of layers of information and then you also do like section cuts. So for example, if I go here, right, you see, it's just way too high contrast in my opinion. I think it's too hard to read. The shadows are too dark and the poche is too dark. And that's the problem. Like if you, let's say, for example, in your presentation, you want to do like this like black and white monochrome scheme, you kind of have to be careful with stuff like this because it gets a little too hard to read. Like you need to either change the poche so that the poche is white, or make the walls very, very white, right? Or make the shadows lighter. But right now, this is a little too busy. Again, I'm going to critique myself and show you things that should change as well. So like, I wouldn't call this successful, this type of style when it comes to this type. It looks cool, don't get me wrong, but it's just way too busy. So like, this is too busy. Like I'd put an X on this, but I wanted to show you, you have to be careful with this type of stuff, Here, so do you see how this feels different when you make the shadows a little bit lighter? So here I made the shadows a little bit lighter. It's much easier to read compared to the original one, right? Where the shadows are just really dark. So if I go back to this like exploded axon, this is just really hard to read, right? The shadows are really hard to read. But if you go back to here, I think this is just much easier to read, right? Like you can read the plan completely. So just changing the shadows helps a lot, right? And just quickly, this is like, again, a translucent looking one, right? People like think, oh, I don't like to use color, but like, to be honest, sometimes color really helps. color really helps. And I know might seem like a fad, or it might seem like, maybe you're trying to look different, but color actually works well at a communicative level when it comes to drawings, and diagrams. So like when you see this contrast of color, you immediately read the plan. Like you read the layout of the plan right away. It's not just because you want to be cool and use like, this like pink and yellow and blue. No, it's because it actually creates this contrast of helping you read the space. And you don't have to follow this color scheme, right? You can use more muted colors, more earth colors, more pastels, more saturated colors, whatever color scheme that you like, right? So like, again, if I go back up to this one, this is like more muted. It's not like very much in your face. It's more subtle, more calm, So it's not really like you have to pick like these like poppy colors, right? You don't have to do that. So like, I think this is way more subtle in my opinion. Let me just show you again. I did show this to you earlier, but I like to recap things. So like on Illustrator, right? So you see here, I'm just taking on Rhino, I isolated this and did a view capture to file, right? So this is its own thing, and I have it saved with a transparent background. So that's how I'm doing the exploded axon. I'm just literally pulling it up. You see? That's all. And then, I have all my layers here. Everything is layered, right? Everything is layered. Let me try to find different ones so you understand what's going on. Again, this is what you saw. This is everything you see here is everything that I'm showing you, right? So, okay, this is the same one. So let me just go back to the exploded one. It's literally this one just sitting on top. It's literally just sitting on top of the drawing. That's all it is. It's like that. That's all it's doing, but it's at a much lower transparency. So this is maybe like at 40% transparency. That's all it is. You see? So very simple stuff. Again, like I did all this early in the video, but I just want to recap. And then let me just take you to Rhino real fast. So on Rhino, you see here, all I'm doing, like I showed you earlier, is updating the clipping plane properties on here. And all these colors, like I said, all these colors are being dictated by your layer colors here. So if you don't like the colors, then just change the colors from your layers. And if you don't like the lighting, then go to your render settings and either make your skylight brighter or less bright. And for your sun settings, make your sun brighter or less bright if you don't like the lighting, So, but the shadows are really important. So you have to make sure you're getting the angle, so you're getting the shadows that you like, And so if I do options, right? I just want to recap and show you the settings so that you don't forget. So go back to here. I have a lot of display styles. So, if I go to my clipping plane, see, I'm making this yellow for my clipping plane, solid yellow. And the edge thickness, you can keep it at 1 or 2, not a big deal. I also said that, if you want to add outlines to your meshes, you can do that. All you want to do is, right now I have them all at 0. But if you wanted to show outlines for your meshes, then you want to give it an outline of 1 and give it the color that you like. And actually that black and white diagram you saw had the outlines. So if I go back to here, my folder. Right. So I just want to show you. You see, these have the outlines around the meshes. Make it bigger. Zoom in for you. You see how it has the outlines around the meshes? It's just so light, it's hard to see. Right? So it's your choice if you want to show outlines around the meshes. When it comes to black and white, you definitely want to. But when you do the colored ones, like how I showed you for these color ones, it's really your choice. Like I'm not doing it for these color ones. I'm not doing it. None of the meshes have outlines around them. Right? And again, like I said, I'm always using InDesign. I'm always using InDesign. Always when I do my layouts, no matter what. Let me just type in my view AX1. Remember, like I'm always saving my view, and then I make 2D with that view, and I always capture that clipping plane. And like I said, you want to have your view saved, right? That's very important. Your ambient color, and just like a big major recap, right? Let me just go back and recap the settings real fast, right? So if I go to these settings, just so you understand, right? So Background, it doesn't really matter what your background is as long as it's transparent or solid color, doesn't really matter. Ground plane, that's important. If you're not going to have a physical surface, then you need to have your ground plane on and just have the altitude at 0. Okay. Shade objects for sure. Flat shading for sure. Object color, backface settings, give it a transparency if you have transparent objects like windows. Show surface edges, yes, for sure. It's up to you if you want to show any other edges like your meshes. I don't. Again, your ambient color is the biggest thing on here. This is what controls the entire color scheme of everything, is your ambient color. Okay, so maybe you want like more of like a red scheme or a yellow scheme, then that's where you change it, and everything will have like this like bluish, yellowish hue to it. All right, so don't forget about this. And again, I always match my shadows to this color as well. If I go to my shadows, you know, high quality shadows, and I'm matching it to this, and I'm bringing down transparency. And shadows ignore user defined clipping plane. Again, if you don't have this checked, shadows are going to be casted over your clipping plane. If you have this checked, no shadows will be casted over your clipping plane. You'll just have like a straight section cut with no shadows casted over it. So remember that, okay? And then, you know, if I go to the objects portion over here, drop it down, surfaces, you can choose the colors you like, use objects width, or you can use pixel width of 1. So just remember all these things, you know. Again, I covered it in detail in the earlier portion of this video, but I just like to recap all this information. I know I sound like a broken record, but yeah, I hope you found this helpful. I mean, if you have any comments or questions, just leave them in the comment section below. And, you know, please like and subscribe if you found this helpful. And please share this channel with your classmates and your colleagues or with anyone else, because I really want to help this channel grow, you know. Alrighty, thank you.